Hello everyone, welcome to Crypto Innovation webinar interview series. I'm your host Shravani. Today we are in season 3 part 4 and topic is very interesting. Homomorphic encryption and application to privacy preserving ride hailing services. Data aggregation has been increased tremendously in recent times, sent stored in multiple environments belonging to other parties such as cloud security provider or other third party organization. From startup to big organization, everyone uses CSP to store or process data, where tools such as BigQuery are used for data processing. CSP do provide some controls over the data customers stored in their environment, but those controls depends on CSP. While users can encrypt and store data on CSP, conducting computation on the data would be limited. Thus, standard encryption is only limited to data storage alone and does not provide any meaningful analysis that can be used. To be able to process data while ensuring the data privacy, researchers are focusing on privacy-enabled computation. Homomorphic encryption is one of the promising approach in this direction. Homomorphic encryption makes it possible to do computation while the data remain encrypted. This will ensure the data remains confidential while it is under process, which provides CSP and other untrusted environment to accomplish their goal. At the same time, we retain the confidentiality of the data. Let's know more about the homomorphic encryption from Professor Srinivas. Before starting our discussion, let me quickly introduce Professor Srinivas. Dr. Srinivas Vivek is currently an assistant professor at IIIT Bangalore. Previously, he was postdoctoral researcher in cryptography group at the University of Bristol, UK. He has obtained his doctoral, master's, and bachelor's degree from the University of Luxembourg, IISc Bangalore, and NIT Surathkal, respectively. He is also a recipient of DST Inspire Faculty Award. His research interest is in the design, analysis, implementation of countermeasures against side channel attack and homomorphic encryption. Welcome, Professor Srinivas, to Crypto Innovation Studies. We are very happy to have you on this series, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shravani Shapure. Thank you for the kind invitation and the introduction, and your description of what is homomorphic encryption has surely made my job a bit easier. Okay, thank you. So thank you once again. So what I'll be presenting today, of course, as you guess, is homomorphic encryption. How it is applied in the context of privacy preserving ride hailing services. Okay, so I'll in particular talk about our recent research work on this topic. So, and actually this research work is a joint work with my former undergrad Deepak Kumar Swami and my current PhD student Shyam Murthy. So this talk is, so let me clarify, is neither a survey on homomorphic encryption nor a survey on privacy preserving ride hailing services. So mainly it's I'll use these things as motivation to communicate our latest research work. Okay, so we know that ride-hailing services such as Uber, Ola, Lyft, they have become very popular in recent years, right? And in fact, if we want to quote some statistics, so the number of Uber trips has increased from 140 million in 2016 to 6.9 billion in 2020. So that's like an exponential growth. So the ride-hailing services that I abbreviate as RHS, and also ride-sharing services that I abbreviate as RSS. So ride-sharing service, for instance, you can think as Ola Share, as or Uber Share as a riding sharing service. So there have been disruptors in the transport sector. So what are the features that could have caused this disruption in this sector? It's mainly because ride requests are available at a touch of button, and then they also provide fare estimation, automatic payments, and also reputation ratings. These things have made it very these services as very popular. So all good. And then, okay, but then what's the problem as far as the privacy is concerned? So these ride-hailing services, they collect vast amount of information about the riders and drivers. So many times it's justified. So such information such as pickup, drop locations, time of travel, so on. This will generate, and this can the services can use this information to do their analysis, the price modeling, and so on. So no doubt this information is useful in order to improve the quality of service by the service provider. Uh, but then so there have been a lot of instances where this information has been misused. Particularly to profile the individuals, their travel history. For example, they could profile journalists and then government officials and so on. Okay, and in fact, the real incidents have been reported in newspapers. So where the Lyft, for instance, was sued for violating California privacy law. Uber employees used this app to spy on their on their ex-lovers or politicians, celebrities, so on. And then it's not just the riders, even drivers also had some trouble. So Uber was in news. I mean, Uber drivers, it seems they were all their privacy too was targeted. And there were complaints that Uber was tracking its drivers in China, and they said that anyone fearing anyone attending the taxi protest would be fired. Okay, so yeah, I mean, they have been in the news for wrong reasons. And then but then the ride-hailing services like Uber have been putting some recent efforts to improve the privacy of the the riders and the drivers data they collect. Okay, for instance, a couple of years ago, just recent, not too far, Uber has employed a technique called differential privacy to protect users' data. So, what exactly is differential privacy? It's a way, to store public information. So, in order to facilitate any, analysis you want or statistical analysis you want to do a data. So, this type of so this type of approach will give a much stronger anonymity guarantees than just merely anonymizing data. So uh, so then in fact, so this project was done in collaboration with researchers from UC Berkeley. Okay, so all good, but then again, is it all done? But there's still a problem. It's engineers. Okay, for instance, its employees can still, okay, this can perform statistical queries, and it can generate a lot of valuable statistics in order to improve the surveys. And also individual data remains private. So the good thing about differential privacy is uh, any information about a particular individual is well hidden. Okay, uh, differential privacy has its own share of problems, but then yet the problem is who actually kind of anonymizes this data. So Uber still has the original data with itself. So it could our data could be protected from its employees, but still somewhere it's there. Not that these ride-hailing services should not be completely trusted, but it's always good if we can design privacy preserving ride-hailing service that do not collect individual data in the first place. I have put not in codes so that it needs to collect minimum amount of information, otherwise it will not be able to provide any service. But the point is, can it be as minimal as possible? So that's all we are asking. So in this talk, we'll focus on privacy preserving ride-hailing service based on homomorphic encryption. So before even talking of homomorphic encryption, okay, why not simply apply our usual encryption thing? So let us recollect, for the sake of the audience. I understand that from all we have a varied audience, so that that's why I have tried to keep my talk as informal as possible. So just for the benefit of everyone, so let's recollect what is encryption technique. So encryption is a cryptographic technique or primitive, so that transforms a plain text into ciphertext using a key. Okay, so and then what is important is the ciphertext can be decrypted only with the secret key, and then others, means those who do not have access to the secret key, cannot learn anything about the plain text and about the underlying plain text. Okay, so for instance, what you see on the right of my screen is an inscription for the Kannada language, one of the early inscriptions called Halmidi inscription. So when I put a suppose, let's assume that's the plain text. So when I put a red box and a lock, that means it's encrypted. Okay, so maybe I'll just try to open the laser pointer. Okay, so it's here. So that means it's encrypted. Okay, so just to tell you, a bit more about how, say, for instance, public key encryption works. So a sender who wants to send a plain text to the recipient uses the recipient's public key to encrypt the data to generate the ciphertext, and then it sends it over a public channel, so anyone can eavesdrop on the ciphertext. Okay, and they will not be able to learn anything. And then recipient on the receipt of the ciphertext, inputs his or her private key, and then decrypts decrypts back to get the plain text. I'm sure most of you are aware of this. Okay, so now let's try to apply a normal encryption technique in the context of our ride-hailing services. Okay, in order to better in order to offer better privacy guarantees for the rider and driver from the service provider. Okay, so this is, you see the service provider on the right. There is a rider, and then there are many drivers. Okay, they're all connected uh, via the internet. So what could rider, for instance, do is just encrypt the data, okay, and then send it to the provider. Okay, of course you're not using so when you say encrypt, with respect to what key? Okay, so service provider would not be a good option, because encryption, yes, it will provide guarantees on transit and maybe at rest, but then okay, so we'll see that. So and then each driver will send his or her locations. Okay, so that's why I say D subscript I. So for instance, this could be I equal to 1, I equal to 2, I equal to 3. Okay, they'll send it. Okay, and then of course the service provider, so while at rest also it would store the the ciphertext, but then so but the problem is it'll if it has to provide the service, then it has to decrypt. Okay, the service provider decrypt, and then so there's no really guarantee, any extra privacy guarantees that's offered to riders and drivers. Okay, and if suppose it is encrypted with respect to, say, the encrypt the public key of the rider, so then it's even worse. Service provider will not be able to do any computation, nor and then in order to find the best match for the rider. Okay, so things are pretty bad. So the problem here is privacy via encryption and then computation. They are seemingly contradictory objectives. Okay. So a typical encryption scheme does not support any computation on the encrypted data. Okay. So in this setting, so no guesses. Basically, we need a special type of encryption scheme called the homomorphic encryption or fully homomorphic encryption scheme. Okay. So I'll tell you what is fully homomorphic encryption scheme. So what is an homomorphic encryption scheme? Basically, so this is a special type of encryption scheme where you suppose you encrypt two plain text data, so you can add them. Okay, whatever add means. So, and then in order to produce the sum of the encryption of the message, the best thing is you need not decrypt. So you need not have access to the secret decryption key. Okay, so and then in the second line, what you can see is you can multiply two ciphertexts without knowing the key in order to generate the ciphertext of the product. Okay, so the moment you can do addition and multiplication, then you can do, for instance, addition could be XOR. Okay, which is addition over the field of two elements, and then multiplication, which is AND. The moment you can do XOR and AND, in principle you can do any computation on the ciphertext, okay, without knowing the decryption key. Okay, so this was invented in around 2009 by Craig Gentry as part of his PhD thesis at Stanford University. Okay, so as you can guess, this type of encryption schemes, they have a lot of potential real world applications. For instance, you can offer smart and private healthcare. Okay, so where the before sharing the data for any analytics, okay, or like for instance genome sequencing, you can encrypt all of them thing, and then any so the cloud service provider, for instance, will only work on the encrypted data, and then provide back the hospital results in the encrypted form, and then the hospital just need to decrypt and then give out the result. Okay, so you're outsourcing your computation, so hospital need not waste its resource in the costly computation, yet it can give out data, and then without actually losing the privacy. Okay, so it's like a win-win situation. So encrypted email search, so your, for instance, your entire email could be encrypted, yet you will be able to perform search on the encrypted data that eventually you can only decrypt. So, and then and it also has applications in smart meters, smart electricity meters. Okay, and then satellite infrastructure, where the infrastructure usually spread across the continents. And then if it is your, say, collecting sensitive data, users are collecting sensitive data through the satellite payload, and then so then the ground stations could be in a different country, and then so your data is always at risk. So then the safer thing is to encrypt all these things. Of course, data analytics, machine learning on privacy present machine learning, you will do analytics on the encrypted data. Okay, so you need a lot of data to do data analytics, right? But then people are shy to share their data due to privacy concerns. So probably potentially homomorphic encryptions can offer a solution to these things, and secure options, many more. Lots and lots of very interesting applications possible. But then what's the problem? Okay, even before that. Okay, so formally, homomorphic encryption scheme is like an encryption scheme, but it has like, so you'll generate a key, you will have encrypt and decrypt procedures, everything's as usual, but it also has additional ciphertext evaluation procedure that can be publicly evaluated. That means you need not have the secret key. So some usual correctness property, the property should stand for correctness. So if you encrypt and decrypt the corresponding ciphertext, decrypt with respect to the secret key, and then you will should get back the message. Compactness means the more and more operations you do on the ciphertext, the size of the ciphertext should not increase. So these two are more or less of course, the first is really important. Second is also important, necessary. So what is optionally, it can also satisfy the circuit privacy property. So what does that mean? Suppose so cloud does some evaluations on the ciphertext. Fine. So the user, upon receiving the ciphertext, should not be able to deduce what function was applied. Okay. So in this sense, so both the privacy of the user, also service provider, could be, is possible in this setting. So to give, for instance, to give you an example, suppose the cloud service provider, there's a service provider who says that, okay, I have an algorithm, a secret algorithm to predict stock prices if a company gives all its data. Okay. But then a company, of course, would be interested as a user to know its prediction of its, the company shares. And then, of course, it's concerned not to give out all the data to the third party, because it may not be able to trust it. So in this setting, so the company as a user will encrypt the data using a homomorphic encryption scheme. And then now assume it is circuit private. So then the company will be able to do some operations on the ciphertext and give back the result in encrypted form. And company will not, the service provider, the share prediction service provider will not learn anything. And then the company will decrypt and then know its price. Okay? If it is circuit private, then the company will not get to see what algorithm was applied on the ciphertext. Okay, so this is an optional property. But if the cloud service provider is already executing an algorithm that's not necessarily to be secret, then your homomorphic encryption scheme need not be circuit private. Okay. So what is this fully homomorphic encryption scheme? That fully, by fully, what we mean is you can do any operation on the ciphertext. Okay, so there's no restriction on the type of function you can apply on a ciphertext. So in fact, so typically you need to represent your function that you want to apply on a ciphertext or any algorithm as a circuit. So that consists of, say, XOR and AND gates. So this XOR and AND could be over a field of two elements. I mean, as I mentioned before, it could be XOR, it could be AND, but it can also be over some finite field. So it's not a problem. Okay, and then but you need to represent like that. And what is the real problem? Homomorphic encryption schemes, they seem to have a lot of potential, right? Why? But then why it's not widely deployed? The problem is, so they're all efficient theoretically, they're all probabilistic polynomial time algorithms, okay? But then in practice, it's about 1,000 to million times slower than operating on plain text. So even if you encrypt a bit, it could be few kilobits, or can be up to a few megabits, depending on the scheme you are using. So there's already a slowdown by a factor of 10 power 8, 10 power 6. And then the real efficiency bottleneck is the multiplicative depth of the circuit. So what is the multiplicative depth? It's basically number of multiplications or the AND gates in a series. So that's really the cause. And then so it's also but still the best thing is, if your circuit has low multiplicative depth, okay, that means you need not perform a lot of not too many multiplication in series. So then it's still practically efficient. Okay, so that's the hope. So current research directions, they explore those applications where the multiplicative depth of the computation that you need to do on the ciphertext is not too high. So yeah, so it will be interesting to apply this homomorphic encryption schemes into this setting and get some practical performance, practically appealing
So
performance.
I have one announcement for the attendees. Please post your questions in the question tab. So if you have any doubt related to what Professor is discussing, we can take up those questions in between, isn't it, Professor?
Oh yes. Oh, and I'll be happy to answer. Feel free to interrupt me. It's always good to be interactive. Good.
Correct. So yeah. So I will. I'm requesting all the participants to please ask the questions in the question tab. So there is a question. How does this work for 1 to n inputs?
How does it work for 1 to n inputs? So I fear I did not understand that. What does that meaning? 1 to n inputs mean?
Can you please, Preeti, can you please elaborate on the question? Okay, you can go ahead. She will type. Then I'll interrupt you.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, she's written, if there are